the recording. We'll bring the meeting to order, and I'll say that I apologize for the dorky glasses, but I think I need them. Anyway, the four of us are here. You can see the names. I won't introduce you to Encore. Is it Encore or Encore?
Encore, the latter.
Encore, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
And we'll call the meeting to order. You can see the four of us. Encore is prosecuting an application to host a cannabis establishment, and I don't see any reason for us not to turn the floor over to Encore to share with us what he'd like. And you've got control, Encore, to display your document if you choose to.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I guess just before I start, I'll just ask the question. Did any of you folks happen to join the community meeting that I had hosted a few weeks ago?
I did.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know you were there, Peter, but Paul, Jason, Jeffrey.
I did not.
Okay.
I did not either, Encore, but I did look at all the materials that you sent or provided to Peter, which I think were the same ones that you presented at the meeting.
Yeah, that's right. And I just wanted to know if you'd already heard a bit of the background. Would it be helpful for me to go through those actual materials? They're fairly detailed, or I can present just a bit of a higher level summary. It's really up to you.
I think a higher level. We're not a controlling committee. We're advisory only, and you know, I don't think the detail is necessary, but whatever you're comfortable with is great.
Sure. Okay, I'll just give a quick summary then. So just as a bit of background, I'm the CEO of a company called C3 Industries. We founded the company in 2016. It's based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where I live. My background is in the corporate finance world. And so I went to undergrad and law school at the University of Michigan. And then I worked as a transactional lawyer in New York City at a big law firm. And then I worked as an investment banker after that, also at a firm in New York. So I come out of the transactional corporate finance world with a strong background in the real estate side in particular. My brother Vishal, who's also one of the co-founders of the business, also has a similar background. He was in banking and then in private equity and then worked at Google for a period of time. And then our third co-founder, Joel Ruggiero, is a childhood friend. We all grew up together in Western New York outside of Buffalo. Joel built a career in the cannabis industry, specifically in Denver, Colorado, where he was the head of operations for one of the largest companies in the Colorado market, which is called The Green Solution. And so he brings a deep background in cannabis operations and experience in licensed cannabis markets. Today as a company, we're active basically in 4 states, which are Michigan, Oregon, Massachusetts, and Missouri. And in those states, we're active both on the production side of the business, so with the cultivation and manufacturing of cannabis products, as well as on the retail side of the business, which is what we're interested in pursuing in Berlin. In Massachusetts specifically, we've spent the last 2 years getting licenses and starting to build out a platform. The first project that we worked on is a large-scale production facility that we're currently building in Franklin, Massachusetts. So that's a project that'll be a 37,000 square foot facility for cultivation and processing, very similar to the 2 facilities that we operate currently in Michigan and Oregon. We have local approvals for that site, which was a process that we went through with the planning board there. We also have our state provisional licenses for that site, which were issued by the CCC, and now we're in construction, and then we'll go into operations from there. We're also looking to put together or operate, I should say, 3 retail licenses in retail locations in Massachusetts, which is what is allowed under the state rules. Have a cap on 3 licenses for any one company. And so Berlin is one of the 3 sites that we're currently pursuing for retail. The other 2 are, one is in Boston in the Dorchester area, and the other one is in Natick. And so our hope and our plan is to have a sort of full vertically integrated platform in Massachusetts as we do in the other states. And that will, you know, encompass basically our Franklin facility and then 3 retail locations. With regard to Berlin,
can I just jump in? Can I just jump in and ask a question?
Absolutely.
So what is it you're going to be doing in Franklin? Natick, Boston, and Berlin is retail, And
Correct.
Franklin something different?
Franklin
What's in Franklin?
is production. So it's the cultivation and manufacturing of cannabis products. So it's
Does
a
that
manufacturing
include or
facility.
grow? You're going to grow there.
Yeah, that's what cultivation is. It's the growing of the plants. Yep. And manufacturing refers to taking that plant material and then extracting oils and other compounds from it and creating all different types of products from that. So that facility will not have any retail activity. It will just be a manufacturing plant.
Got it.
And yep.
Okay, super. Go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah. And so in Berlin, the site that we're proposing is 64 Banner Road. And this is an interesting property. It sits right on the border of Berlin and Marlborough. And the access to this property, as you may have seen in the materials that I'd sent around, comes off of Donald Lynch Boulevard. So basically the access road is through the Marlborough side. And the property itself is kind of tucked back. It's got a fairly long road leading back to it. And it's sort of in the middle of the woods. It's a little bit separated from any other properties. And it's a 30,000 square foot building that currently exists there. That's divided into several units. And we are leasing one of the units in that building, which is about 5,000 square feet. And that unit is sort of tucked around on the sort of the northwest side of this building. And so when we look at these sites for cannabis retail, one of the questions that always comes up in local communities is, how does this site possibly infringe on other businesses, on other other sensitive uses, if you will, such as schools or churches or parks or places where children may congregate. And so I think one of the reasons we're really excited about this Berlin project is, in our minds, given all the sites we've looked at over time, this is really one of the least intrusive sites from that standpoint. It's quite separated from any other sensitive use. We don't think there should be any concerns around, in some places people are concerned if younger people are going to see the business, maybe other business owners may have concerns. And so I think in our minds, this site is really well suited for this use and kind of tucked away and a little bit out of sight, out of mind.
Encore, is this a good time to display the aerial that we talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pull it up right now. Bear with me for 1 second, please.
Mary, you've multiplied.
I'm going to, if Anchor has what you're trying to display, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up right now, Mary. I've got it.
Okay.
I've got it ready here. So.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you look here, and can you all see my screen clearly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So this is an aerial view of the site, and it's highlighted there in yellow. And you can see that long access road that comes down from it to the south. And that road eventually, and I'm sorry, it's a bit cut off here, but it hits Donald Lynch Boulevard and kind of where there are entrances for some of the credit unions there. You can also see Best Buy a bit to the northeast there. So it's a major commercial area. I think a lot of traffic going to these big box retailers there, as well as to the mall that's further up the road. And so we're also feeling like it's a good choice from a traffic standpoint. There's lots of parking available as well on the site, which I can flip to that page shortly. I think the site in the current configuration that our civil engineer has laid out, I think there's 70 plus parking spaces that we can have there. And so I think the other issue that often is a concern is traffic and parking. And I think, again, we've got, great access through a very commercial corridor. And then we've got a bunch of parking on the site. So I think, again, our hope is that the community agrees that, that this is an appropriate place to do this given these various features. And I'll just flip quickly.
This is very helpful.
Yeah, and I'll quickly flip to the parking plan that I was mentioning a moment ago, just so everybody can have a sense for what that looks like. So if you look at this slide, this is something that our civil engineer has put together. We will go through a formal site plan approval process before we start, building out the interior or operating this location. And so this plan would be put through the local approval process, and we would make any modifications needed to meet any local requirements. But our civil engineers local, they're very well versed in Berlin's local ordinances, and so we believe this plan that we've presented should meet all the requirements. But we'll go through the process in detail once we get to that stage. We're not quite the way the sequencing works. We've hosted our community outreach meeting. We've also presented to the select board a few months ago. The next step would be for the select board to enter into negotiations with us for a host community agreement. And if the board approves us negotiating that, then we would look at that document together. Ideally, it would be agreed upon and put in place, and then we would enter into the special use and the site plan and special permit processes with the planning board and other local bodies. So there's still some steps ahead. Please.
I was just going to say, which section of the building is your
It's the top right. It's Suite 100 is labeled here. If you look, Peter.
Got it.
The top right portion of the building.
Does anybody else have any questions? I'm the only one that seems to be speaking up. Anyone else?
Hey, I didn't have any questions, Peter, because I reviewed all the material that you provided. There's like 38 slides or 45 slides or whatever. So.
Yeah, and Paul, a lot of that is there. Some of it is there as reference information, all the security detail and all that. There's certain things that this is the same presentation from, as you mentioned, from the community outreach meeting, and the state has some pretty specific requirements of what topics we're going to cover. So yeah, there's a lot there, but hopefully some of it is at least interesting and helpful.
No, it was very helpful.
What was there any concerns at the community outreach meeting?
So Jason, I would say there was one attendee who raised a lot of concerns. I would put them into the category of broader concerns with cannabis legalization and cannabis being in the community. And Peter can please weigh in as well, but there were not really any concerns about the site itself or us as an operator, I don't think.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one member of the community that's generically opposed to this, so
Sure.
that person.
And
Yeah,
Encore, I'm sure you deal with that in just about every community you guys operate.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. I mean, I said this in the meeting, there's a broad set of views out there on cannabis and the reform of cannabis and legalization. And so, yes, there are definitely people that have a moral or philosophical opposition to cannabis in their community. And so, yeah, no, I've definitely heard those perspectives, and I get it. And for me, I only look to try to do this in communities where I see broad support for the industry and for the presence of this. I'm really not trying to force this into a community or do it, in a way that's very kind of, in opposition with a lot of members of the community. I think it's almost impossible, I think, to get 100% support, of course, but I have, I've been spending a lot of time and talking to a lot of folks locally for the last 6 months, and it does feel like that generally speaking, there's, I think, pretty broad support for this. And I think also, like I said, I've really tried to find a site that hopefully would not present some of the very fair concerns that other sites may present. If you do, there is an absolute logic in my mind to separating cannabis uses from certain other uses. And that I don't have any issue with, and I think is fully appropriate. And so, to me, that's this site. I can't really see much that anybody could argue with. If the community has decided that it's okay with having a couple of cannabis businesses in the community, in my mind, there's no better place to put it than in a building like this.
Yeah. So off-topic, personal question though. Where are you from outside of Buffalo?
My family is from India originally. My parents came here in 1975, and my dad went to Ohio State and did his engineering work there, and then was an engineer in the auto industry for 30 plus years, and Ford and GM mostly. And then, I broke his heart and went to Michigan. So, and, but he, he loves, he's got to support both schools now. But yeah, my family's from India originally. My brother and I were both born here in Columbus, actually. And, but have a lot of family back there still. And, I don't know that my parents expected us to leave our, careers in finance to be doing this, but, I think, there's a right way to approach this business, we think. And there's, certain obligations I think that we have if you're going to be in this business to sort of make sure that you're a positive member of the community. I think that's part of what I talked about in my community presentation, that, we do view this as coming with sort of corresponding obligations of doing it the right way. And then also trying to create some benefits for the community, which, there's, the interesting thing about Massachusetts, which is different than a lot of states, is that they have explicitly allowed this 3% local tax to be charged. And a lot of people complain about that. I actually find it sort of refreshing because it makes it fairly clear what is allowed and what is encouraged and how the local community can benefit from it. Because in Michigan, for example, it's not really allowed, but then you have people getting creative and doing weird things. And to me, there should be a very direct local benefit. And a local tax that goes right to the municipality versus, a tax that goes to the state and then gets allocated in some way that's outside of the local municipality's control is just less directly beneficial. And so, I think it could be a good fit, and I think it'll be positive for the community. And I think we're proud as operators in this business about how we do things and trying to convey that, in these various meetings and presentations.
And the tax is on gross sales?
That's right, Paul. It's 3% of gross. That's right.
Yeah.
What do you expect gross to be once you're up and running?
Great question,
Or
Peter.
what do you expect that 3%? It's
Sure.
not just 3%. There's multiple taxes, aren't there?
There are
Or
other,
is the 3%
basically like
just
a
that?
sales tax and excise tax that the customer pays, but that flows into sort of other buckets with the state. The 3% is a separate, specific local tax that flows to the local municipality. So I think in total, I believe the total taxes on each sale for the consumer is about 17%.
What will the 3% represent once you're up and running?
I think it's sort of dependent on the market. And by that, I mean, how many other stores come around, how far away are they? There's some of that type of analysis. I think at a baseline level, we could assume something like $4 million in sales from this location. So that would imply $120,000 in revenue. It's possible that this store could do more than that, though. And that's somewhat based on, again, what happens in the competitive environment, which there are, I want to say, something like 60 or 70 new retail locations that are sort of provisionally approved and are working their way towards operations. So you will see, the market has been very lightly populated up to this point. That's starting to fill in now. But I would be very surprised if we weren't hitting at least those types of numbers.
Now, won't there be an assessment change as well? Because the business will be taxed on the income approach as opposed to the real estate only?
Honestly, Peter, I wouldn't know the answer to that question. It may be that there would be, and certainly we'll be improving the building as well. So I don't know how that would factor into into that analysis, but there very well could be an increase in property taxes as well.
Someone else had some other question. I'm sorry.
I was just asking, are there other businesses in the other suites currently?
Yeah, so looking at this diagram here, Suite 700 is where the owner of the building has his business, which is a landscaping business. So they occupy 700. Suite 300 is occupied by, I want to say it's a tile company. It's mostly used for warehousing purposes right now. And then I believe Suite 500 is vacant, but there is, I believe, another sort of company that's similar that's going to use it for warehousing purposes that is in talks with the owner. So currently 700 and 300 are occupied.
But not for walk-in type businesses.
I'm sorry?
But not for walk-in type businesses.
Exactly. Yeah. Very low. Yes. Very low traffic. And they're not retail in nature.
And this
So
is just something that been a question for me for this industry in general. As banking, a lot of banks can't actually do business with cannabis because they're federally insured, and federally cannabis is still non-legal. So I was just wondering how that works in terms of your
No,
converting
it's a great
money
question.
into banking.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So federally, there are still banking regulation, sort of restrictions on banking for banking institutions that are more federally regulated. There are a number of credit unions and local banks that are servicing the space. And so in Massachusetts, there's a group called Gardner Federal Credit Union that's very active. There's a couple of other banks as well that are they're involved in the space. And so we actually have full banking in Michigan and in Oregon, as well as in Massachusetts. And so we will be able to operate, and we do operate just like any other business would. The only real impact, frankly, for us is in the fees. We pay a very, very heavy burden of fees to have standard banking services, at least compared to normal, what you would pay as a normal business. Luckily it is available though, because frankly, it would be a nightmare to try to operate without banking. But it is available, and we'll have no problem with it in Massachusetts.
Jeff, is your bank federally insured? It must be, and therefore it's not a candidate, right?
Yeah, we have both. We have both FDIC and DIF, so we're ineligible to work with.
Yeah, no, it's still very limited. We are, I think, cautiously optimistic that there could be some federal reform, specifically in the banking area. There's a bill called the SAFE Act that's actually been passed by the House and is in the Senate right now that would specifically allow for larger federally backed banking institutions to start working in cannabis. We thought that would happen before the election. Candidly, now it's a little bit unclear, but there is pretty broad-based support for some elements of cannabis reform federally, and banking is kind of at the top of that list.
Encore, when do you expect to open the doors if things go as planned?
It's a great question. I've submitted, some info to Margaret and to the select board on that includes, things like a timeline. So some of it is dependent on, kind of the local approval process and state process, but roughly speaking, I think from the moment that we sign a host agreement, I think we can get this location open roughly in about 10 months or so. The steps that you have to go through is once the host agreement is signed, then I can concurrently apply for my state license and also start going through the local special permit and site plan approval process. So those two processes can kind of go in parallel with each other. I think roughly speaking, I'd like to think that within 6 months, I can get through the state process and hopefully the local process as well. Again, some of these things are outside of our control. And then from there, once those processes are complete, both state and local, I would start construction on the interior. That should be relatively quick. We think something like 90 days is roughly what it takes me usually to build out a retail location. So that's how I'm getting to that rough 10-month time frame. Where I could get slowed down is in the state process. They have been getting faster with processing those, but historically 6 to 9 months was kind of always the sort of timeline to expect there. So I am assuming the shorter end of that time frame, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you opened a store? And if not, if the answer is no to this full question, can you think of one in your mind and describe to us a store like this one, meaning in a small town, a very small town, sort of out of the way, in an out of the way location? Because this is not going to be Macy's and it won't be New York City. It's the antithesis of that. Have you opened a store like that elsewhere in the country?
Yeah. I've got a couple stores in Michigan that are in, there's nuances, of course, to every community, but they're not in sort of prime A retail locations, which I think is kind of what you're getting at a little bit. I do view these a little bit as a destination. And so I think that people there, even as the market fills in, there's still not going to be, endless numbers of these stores. And so people that are interested in these products will do their homework, will find out where the local options are, and will make their way there, even if they're not exactly, on the street corner next to the gas station. And I do think that, why I'm, one of the really fascinating things about this site is it is so tucked away. It is sort of, really on its own in some ways. And it's sort of semi-industrial, which, is good and bad, but I think allows for all this parking. So it's got those features that hopefully make it more palatable for the community. But then on the flip side, its entrance is right off of a major retail corridor. So it's not as if people aren't going there to do shopping, to go to Best Buy, to go to Macy's. So in a way, I think we've got kind of the best of both worlds. And that's part of why I'm really excited about this project.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions?
I do not.
So you might get a kick out of this since Jason was a little off topic. I'm in the Adirondacks right now, not terribly far from where you were brought up.
Okay, yeah, that's my old stomping grounds. So yeah, it's hopefully you're enjoying it. It's a nice time of the year to be in that area.
I have another 3 hours to drive, and it's work related, but it's a pretty place, and I got my dog, and we'll go for a swim. And anyway,
Yeah.
but the stage is yours. Please continue on any other highlights you'd like to share with us.
I think I really covered most of the high level topics. I mean, I'm more than happy if there's parts of the presentation that anybody would like me to drill into, or if there's any specific questions, I've got I'm available, so I'm happy to answer or have more discussion if there's anybody that would like to ask any questions.
Is there anything that you feel from a community standpoint you need help with?
No, I mean, I think if there are, certainly if there's, for example, Peter joined the community meeting and suggested that I present to this group, and I thought that was really helpful because candidly, I don't know every local relevant kind of group to have dialogue with, or even individuals or other business owners. So certainly if there's anybody that you all feel I should be reaching out to or introducing myself to, I think that guidance is always really helpful. I think other than that, I've had a great working relationship with Margaret and with Mary, and I'm hoping to, hopefully the select board will want me to move forward into the next part of this now. So I think, besides the formal city process or town process that will continue here, I think it's really just about making sure I'm talking to all the folks that I should be talking to, and if there's feedback or questions or concerns that, I'm hearing them and trying to take them into account.
Seems to me that you'll have to be heavily involved with the select board and planning board. You know that already, of course. And I don't know, maybe it would be kind of interesting to take a straw poll, and I'll start by saying thus far, it seems like you're a professional handling this professionally, and it seems positive to me, and I would support what I've seen so far. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on how they feel about it, but maybe yay or nay would help Encore know at least what we feel. Jason, put you on the spot.
I mean, looking through the presentation and listening to you speak today, I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have the ability to continue to move forward in this community based on what your background is and your depth of knowledge of the industry already in the different states you operate. I wouldn't foresee any barriers that would hold you up.
And Jason's in retail in a big way.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so great. Thank you, Jason.
He knows retail.
I'd agree.
Jeff, Paul?
I agree with Jason. I mean, I wrote the presentation. I think the location's good. The town voted to have this. The town allows this. I can't imagine that this is not going to go through.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Jeff?
It looks like a sound business proposal. I don't have any comments other than, it's unfortunate we're not allowed to work at all with it. But
You don't want him to bring suitcases of cash into your branch?
I wouldn't mind, but it caused some extra paperwork probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say, other than the compliance and risk management fund, but yeah, but no, I mean, I think things will be changing. Yeah, I think things will be changing pretty quick on that front. To be honest with you, I think that's the first domino that's going to fall in terms of federal reform. So, and I'd love to circle back in a couple months and update everybody on what's happening with the process and all that. If that makes sense, Peter, maybe we can.
Sure. I mean, you can reach out to me or all of us, any of us, at any point when you like. And roughly speaking, we meet once a month. I'm going to propose that we maybe skip a month during the summer, but I'm reachable and I can reach the rest of the gang anytime. So if you need us in some way. And I think you've gotten, 4 supportive members here that you can, share with others if you choose to.
Yeah, no, it's great to know that. I really appreciate everyone looking at the materials and spending some time with me today. And yeah, to me, I think there's no harm in maybe me coming back in a couple meetings as hopefully we've made progress with the town and just updating everybody. And we may have some more detailed, plans we can share and things like that, just to get feedback along the way. So.
Yeah. And besides which, you already know that you're in good hands with Mary and Margaret. I mean, they're competent, both of them. And I'll take that $50 later, Mary. Anyway, but you're in good hands with them. So.
I'll pay you in coffee, Peter.
Yeah. So unless there's anything else, guys, anything else we want to ask or bug Encore for? Seems not.
No, I think that's been great.
Yeah, certainly circle back. Please stay on the meeting if you stay with us in the very exciting meeting we're about to have, if you like, or drop off if you prefer.
I'm going to jump off if you don't mind. I want to go hang out with my kids for a little while. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
All right. So long. Good night. All righty. Minutes, I'm completely unprepared. Paul was nice enough to draft the most recent minutes. I will catch up with the couple 3 that were owed. Paul, are there any particular questions that you want to ask or about the last set of minutes that you gave me today?
Sure. Maybe Jason or Jeff remember, and I don't, Mary, I think you were on too for at least a while. Did Matt attend? Matt was slow joining. Did he join us last meeting and report on all the River Ridge Boundless Cafe stuff, or was that something that had been conveyed to Peter? And Peter had a lot of information, and I have that under Peter, but I just can't remember whether Matt jumped in because he was there.
Matt was here 2 meetings ago, but not last meeting.
That's what I have too. I have all the information you had in there, Peter, was from you, as I recall. I don't have Matt being a guest at all. I usually record that.
Okay, super. Any other questions?
No, that clarifies that one. That was the biggest comment, whether Matt was there or not. So I think we're good.
All right. Since you're chatting, Paul, you have nothing to say about Highland Commons. You weren't able to reach Jed, right?
He didn't respond. I texted him a couple of times and said, if you got something, I didn't want to keep bothering him, but he has not gotten back to me.
Okay.
So I assume
I have a little.
Good.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, that's it. I don't have any. He did not get back to me. I gave him the opportunity a couple times to do that, and he did not.
So I've got a mini update. So Cabela's, you may or may not know, is open and has been. And it's sort of normal-ish with, I think, somewhat limited hours. They've got limited staff. There's not much to tell there. I didn't talk to Rich, but Rich has been promoted. He's running 2 other stores now, Hartford, Connecticut, and Maine, I think. And the assistant manager has been promoted to manager. I was in there a couple of days ago, and it seems relatively normal. I spoke to Chris Bastion at Solomon Pond Mall. They opened June 10th. They have limited hours, 11 to 7 Monday through Saturday and 12 to 6 on Sundays. I encouraged him, and those of you that are on Facebook, which is none. Right, Jeff, you're not on the Berlin Facebook, or are you?
I'm not. I don't actually have
Um,
Facebook at all.
Good decision.
Anyway, I encouraged him to post on Facebook that he's open because I had no idea that he was open. He wouldn't talk much or at all about the individual stores and how well or poorly they're doing or who's staying and who's not. Apple is open. Indoor dining is in progress. I was surprised.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Bertucci's I think they were scheduled to open this past weekend, I think, indoor. They look like they're prepared. They put up plexiglass shields between every one of their booths. They look like they're ready.
Yeah. Anchors are open. Apple, I said it was open.
Harry, you have a question? No,
If
you
the
look like
chair-
you have a question.
Just-
Oh, for God's sake.
Ah,
Go
110,
ahead.
110 Grill was granted permission for expanded outdoor seating. And they just got
Oh,
that.
that's good to know.
And Berlin Country Club is looking for permission at Monday night's meeting for outdoor seating and service.
Why do we, Berlin, need to give permission to like a golf course to
They-
have
they're-
or even 110?
Their licensed premises was inside the building at Berlin Country Club, not outside.
Oh.
And for 110 Grill, it was a limited part of the patio, but they've expanded that into the sidewalk with Benderson's approval.
Cool.
So it's the liquor is the reason.
On-site consumption. It's not a package store. It's for the restaurant. They call them Section 12 licenses.
Right, but if they didn't serve liquor, then they wouldn't need permission.
They
right?
would. Their common vic license that the selectmen issue are through the selectman's office with a defined premises too. So, but it's the liquor is the bigger concern.
Got it. Good.
That's good.
I asked him how bad it was. He grumbled. So it doesn't sound like the retail mall business is great, which I'm sure we're not shocked to hear. The shoppers are back, he said. And when they open at 11 o'clock, there are lines to get in. I think that's, I suggested, and Mary can hopefully update us, I suggested that they get the blinky sign, you know, the DPW sign, rotated around the town, indicating that Salmon Pond Mall is open. So I talked to Tom Galvin and Margaret about it, and they were on board with that. Do you know what came of that, Mary, or do you even know about it?
I can copy you, Dave Smith, who actually controls the blinky sign, and the chief, and Margaret right now, just to say, can you guys go get that done tomorrow?
Well, I already brought it to Tom's and Margaret's attention, so I don't want to be a pain in the butt.
The highway department, did you already bring it to Dave's attention?
No, Tom and Margaret were going to do that.
Gotcha.
But if you want, I'll leave that up to your good judgment.
Just a reminder, it's not a big deal. He doesn't mind. He
Yeah,
knows that that
so-
sign has to be yanked around town all the time. Where did you have a place where you thought it should be?
No, I just thought it should be at strategic locations throughout the town and rotated around, saying it's open. Drive
Okay.
some traffic there. I don't know, how do you guys feel about that idea?
Sounds great.
Okay.
The tricky part about the blinky sign is that you have to keep it concise. So that
Right.
people don't, like, you can't wait for the third and fourth page of a blinky sign to rotate through, that they'll drive off a road. So just Salmon Pond open. Do they have hours?
You can't write a novel?
No. Well, you can, but it won't be pretty. Do you know what their hours are? Or I'll go look it up on the web.
They're 11 to 7 Monday through Saturday and 12 to 6 Sunday.
Okay.
So the only question I have, Peter, is should it be just Solomon? Are we being preferential, or should we say something about Solomon and Highland?
I think we're being preferential. I'm being preferential because they're unique compared to Highland Commons. I think everyone that doesn't have their head in the sand knows that Highland Commons is open. But if you disagree, we can certainly focus on maybe Clinton Savings Bank, for example. Oh, just kidding. But whatever
open.
other.
That's where the
Right.
50 is, right? No.
Yeah, they're not
That's
open
right.
yet.
Nice.
Next week, Jeff, the 9th
But
of July?
pardon me?
I think Jeff opens on the 9th of July. I thought I heard that somewhere.
6th of July.
All right, good. Can't wait.
So Monday.
Monday. Right, sorry.
Um,
So yeah, go
but
ahead
do
and
you
do Solomon.
guys-
That's okay.
But is there a different business of some sort we want to push the blinky sign onto? I think that's it. But is there somewhere else?
No, let's start with that mall.
All right. So maybe between Margaret, Mary, and Dave and Tom, if there's a other business, maybe we can use it for that too. Okay. Anyway, that's the information I've got for Cabela's and Simon. I think that Matt Senni is lurking on the phone. Matt, are you there? Is he on the phone? Can you see?
I don't see him.
I don't either.
He was. He
Six
texted me.
participants. Somebody just
There
dropped off.
was a Jennifer Madden on the line. I just promoted to
She's
panelist.
She's on now. Hi, Jennifer. You want to unmute yourself and I say hello?
I've asked her to, there you go.
There we go.
And you can start your camera too.
The mystery of Jennifer. If you can hear us, we can't hear you.
Yeah, your microphone's open, Jennifer. Are you there? And you can turn your camera on.
And Jennifer would be who? With
We don't know.
Woman of mystery.
okay.
All right. Jennifer remains a mystery. So that's it. So Jason, you're up.
So website should be up to date. I was on there today, and I think all members are listed, and we should be good to go there.
The legacy site or the new site?
Both.
Oh, good.
Both should be up
Did
to
you
date.
work on it with Did you work on it with James, or how did you accomplish that?
Fiddling. So we'll see if it sticks, because I fiddled before and it didn't stick. But I'll go back in tomorrow and see if I need to do anything.
Great, thank you.
Let me pull up my sign information. And let me share my screen. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh,
There we go.
All right.
So I was working with Connor Signing Graphics, and just talked about the potentials of community sign and what it would look like and how we could operate it. The rough estimate here would be $17.85 per sign and then $200 for installation. I'll pull up a map next. I identified 3 locations that I thought of, but obviously I would want your guys' input as far as location and how many signs maybe, and what do we actually want to accomplish with this. But something that was, while I was doing some research and thinking about this, is we had talked about having it sponsored, and I put a guest sponsor on here as a design thing, but
Nice job. Nice job looping Jeff into this.
so we can do this one of 2 ways too. We can have the signs made, and the sponsor areas can be interchangeable. And with that, you can do sponsor for 1 year. So it could be actually a small source of revenue for the town to have businesses be sponsored on these signs, and have it be a 12-month thing or a annual thing or 2-year thing or whatever. And there could be a cost to it to have a small revenue go into it, to where it's not a permanent sponsorship sign. And that's something I guess I would want your guys' input on, and as far as putting together a proposal for the town. And I think it's going to be pretty tough to ask the town to drop $6,000 on 3 signs, given the environment we're in right now. But
Yeah, I think if it's not funded by sponsors, it's going to die a fiery death.
correct.
Especially with COVID.
But if it's something that we present it to, it's a annual sponsorship, and we have to, the community has to front the money for the 3 signs, and maybe you get a handful of sponsors to throw on the 3 signs for the first year to absorb, maybe it's 30% of the cost or 50% of the cost. I don't know what we would charge for a sponsorship or what would be reasonable. We would have to discuss those things. But if you think about it that way, and if you were able to accomplish 50% of the cost through sponsors, and then year 2, the signs are paid for by the sponsors. Year 3, it's, a couple $1,000s in revenue.
Let's get Jeff's reaction. Jeff's on the other side of the table for this sort of thing. What's your reaction to Jason's proposal? What's your first impression?
I like the idea of it. I think 50% of the sign might be a bit much for what you're going to get, considering the cost of these for a year's subscription. But you could do, maybe 25%, and then it'd be paid for in 4 years of sponsorship. The only concern I have is if you get sponsors at the beginning and then all of a sudden lose sponsors, or either because people decide not to renew, or do you end up taking down their sign and then you have no sponsor for a year or 2 unless somebody, and then you're fundraising for it as well. I do like the idea of sponsors, but it might make it a continual project for you as opposed to a one-time project.
Jeff, is your response tailored to Clinton, or sort of a generic response to? Are you thinking about Clinton when you speak about this, or more generic?
So I have no authority to approve sponsorships for Clinton. I can bring them up to senior management, so I'm not speaking on behalf of Clinton Savings. I personally think I would certainly recommend a sponsorship, but I have no idea what or they will or will not approve ahead of time. I'm just thinking, as a business in the community and as a member of this committee, what could it amount to in terms of future problems for this, as opposed to, because if you're looking for sponsorships on an annual basis, if somebody at some point drops off, now you're going to go look for a new sponsor, which is going to then fall back on the committee to go looking for a sponsor again.
Yeah.
As opposed to a one-time project, it makes it more of a continual project.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, and I agree with your point, and I think 50% is shooting for the moon.
Yeah.
But these signs are 3x5, so they're a pretty big sign. So it's not necessarily impossible to say you could have 2 sponsors per sign or 3 sponsors per sign. So if you were thinking 2 sponsors per sign, because you have a front and a back to it, it's going to be 2-sided. At $500 for the year for advertising, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So that's, I agree with you looking out for me and the residual work that could be added to it. But I think the bonus with that too is the community could use it to give messages. So it's not even, let's say there wasn't a sponsor. If we determine with 3 signs, there's 6 sponsors, 1 per side. If we only had 4 sponsors and we had 2 blank sides, those blank sides could be community messaging. Something we use to put on there, because the cost to doing it is very, very minimal.
That was my next question, is how much is the actual piece to put on if you were to change sponsors, because that would cut out of what you're actually earning.
Yeah, I thought that he told me it was like $100.
Okay.
So it'd be 20% of the sponsor if we were talking 500, to change it up every year. But again, we can get into more kind of detail with that, and I can have him break it down a little deeper for me.
Jason, what's your sense of how? The other piece here, besides losing.
So what is the next step? how do we consider this
Maintenance.
from
I had a
next
question
step
about maintenance.
standpoint?
And how often do you have to maintain?
So
You
the
have to
signs would
repaint it
be-
4 or 5
the
years?
The signs would be maintenance free.
Oh,
There's
okay, cool.
it's a reflective coating that's on the paint
Okay.
to help it stand out and shout. There's really no upkeep to them. The
Cool.
4x4 posts that hold the signs up are covered in vinyl, so they don't have to be repainted every year. Depending on the location of the signs that we kind of set in on, we could reach out to the garden club to do some landscaping around the signs. There's different things we could do to spice the signs up and do different things that wouldn't really cost us anything other than whatever the cost of plants are. If it's a community
Right.
service, you could get the
Right.
high school to do it.
Yep. That sounds
So
good.
the upkeep, to answer your question, Paul, there is really no upkeep.
That's
The
great,
upkeep would be the annual changeover of the signs,
which is nothing.
which is literally a peel and stick label.
Yep.
So, let me pull up the map. I don't know how well you can see what I put on here, but I thought somewhere off of 495 would be the right location to have a sign.
Hang
Shouting
on,
out.
Jason, you're frozen right now. I can't, the map's not popping up.
Hold 1 second.
Hey, guys, also, I see that Peter must have fallen off the call.
Yeah.
Hold
He
on a
must
minute.
have
Let me
fallen
see.
off the call.
I'm pulling him back in. And also, Jennifer Madden is Matt Senni.
Okay.
That's his stage name, apparently.
Transitioning.
No, I don't know. I'm gonna come down and get coffee from Red Barn. Okay, Peter, you back
Yeah.
with us?
Did my screen pop back up?
I still see the Connor Graphics sign up there.
I do too. I see the iconographic sign.
The other thing, Jason, I don't know if you were looking for more than one quote, but there's also Sunshine Signs is one that the bank has used often.
Yeah. Did the map
There's
pop
your
up now?
map.
There you go.
There you
Yes.
go. Yep, it's popped up now. Good job.
So I haven't really driven around and scoped out specific locations for signs. But at a glance, I really thought somewhere along the 495 would be a right spot. Because you're going to catch people getting on and off the highway. I thought the far end of 62 at the other edge of town. And I thought about all the way down by the Homewood Suites and that end of town. Do you guys have any input on your traffic flows that you think would be either a fourth location or a better location than one of these?
Yep. The only one that I would potentially say is just up from the Flat Penny. I wonder whether there is more traffic between Clinton and Berlin on the road that runs by the Flat Penny as opposed to 62.
Well, I was almost thinking that intersection.
Yeah, you could almost do that. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It's a 5-way stop. There's definitely space on some of those corners that you could put a sign like this. So it doesn't have to be on the border of the town.
Right.
But, that's a great location, the intersection there.
Right.
And again, clearly somewhere around the 495 exits are going to give us some good bang, especially for somebody that wants their business shouted out.
Right.
And then the other end of South Street, or River Road.
Yep.
Peter, do you have any input on that? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I started hearing in the last 2 minutes. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
My Bluetooth got hung up. I'm trying to catch up. So were you talking about Randall and 62? Was that where you were talking about between Clinton and Berlin?
Well, I had just put circles on the major, pass-throughs that I had thought of. 62, it it could be Randall, like, you know, that intersection there, it's a 5-way stop. That would be a great location for a sign, especially when you talk about an advertisement.
Yeah, I have a suspicious feeling that'll cause accidents and trouble.
Well,
But maybe,
you know,
maybe.
maybe it's
I
over.
mean, I think one thing we should do, we the EDC, is we should come up with a list of 5 or 10 locations that we think are good candidates, and then bounce it off of planning, or bounce it off of Margaret, or bounce it off of the select board, and see something like that.
Really,
I mean, I think there's multiple steps here, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think if we collectively come together with a handful of locations, and then we talk to the highway department. If the highway department thinks that those locations are okay, then I think that's when you go to planning and selectmen and all. Like, I think that's when we would put together a formal proposal and then go to the selectmen and the folks and say, hey, this is what we would like to try to help accomplish, and this is the cost, and these are the locations, and here's the future potential revenue if it worked out.
Yeah.
So the peanut gallery, that's Mary, is texting me. Hey, Mary, speak up. You have some ideas and thoughts here.
I'm
She
so
said
heavily
that
caffeinated. I'm just flying. I was listening to you guys talk about the signs, and those are really nice images. And then Matt Senni is texting that he is Jennifer Madden, can hear, but he can't speak. And he wanted to know, maybe he's being informal, but like, do you have some kind of criteria as you want to be careful who you're vetting is the sponsor of on a sign, welcome to Berlin, and who this, like Clinton Savings Bank is like a bank, but like, for example, let's pick on Anchor. Do you want the marijuana store to be sponsoring a welcome to Berlin sign? That's just one thing. And then another thing is
that would certainly be controversial. Go ahead.
Be controversial. It might even be something, a tourist attraction.
Yeah, right.
Well, and I don't think you can discriminate against a business that wants to front. So
Not
Right.
my, yeah.
Good point.
And then the other thing is the selectmen had hoped, and there was some citizens who didn't organize in the end, but the selectmen were hoping that there'd be an Adopt the Island program and that somebody would take over quarterbacking it. But they were okay with the idea of signage and sponsorship for different like aesthetic features like landscaping, hopefully with perennials and not annuals, things that would just self-maintain, but
Sure.
with signs. But then that citizen effort kind of faded away. And I know that that's another thing, that if you had a lot of interest on the Welcome to Berlin signs, maybe others or smaller businesses might be interested in Adopt an Island.
yeah,
Well, what island are you referring to, Mary?
any island around a sign.
Yeah, basically anywhere that's on public land. It's maybe not literally an island, but because some of them are paved, but some of them could be islands that have a planter dropped on it too, like a PVC planter that could take some wear and tear.
We have 12 minutes, everyone, so we should keep that in mind, or I'll get in trouble with Mary and conservation.
I'll just end the meeting.
You what?
Mary,
I'll just end the meeting.
Yeah, she's in the
Great.
meeting. So the meeting's ending at 7:10. The other thing we could do as we prep, I mean, Jason, your idea of talking to the highway department is great, and getting a handful of locations. We probably want to get some sense of, this is a great idea, but if we were to go out and only 2 businesses even said they have an interest, well, then you're not going to be able to find money for 6 sponsors for several years, right? I mean, we would like to understand how many people would actually be interested in this in a sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we reached out to the local business community and, somebody like Encore would probably love to have their name on a sign opening a new business in town.
I have a suspicious feeling that there would be such an outcry. I think we should not stop it. We should not, discourage it, but I think there'd be a terrible outcry.
Well,
But I'm all for making it an option.
sure.
So
I don't think the pitch to the town is look at it as a revenue provider for the community. It's look at it as a
It'll pay for itself eventually.
Yeah, eventually it will pay for itself. And you think about, I mean, I'll get more accurate costs on how how expensive it is to reprint the sponsorships.
Why don't we do this? Given the time and the inefficiency of these government meetings, one of which we're in right now, why don't we not deliberate, because that's the big violation, but why don't we just do a 4-way email as Jason develops stuff? Just don't deliberate and just don't make decisions over email. Do you think we can do that legally, Mary? Otherwise, we'll be doing this till doomsday.
I feel like I need to read you Miranda rights.
So do you think we can do that? Discuss the stupid sign without getting an open meeting law violation?
I think that if you had people take different pieces of the task, like, are you going to recreate the wheel? There's other communities that have this. You can ask other communities, or have you already, Jason?
I have not spoken to other communities.
Other communities
Jason,
still have good samples of what you're looking at, asking their, whoever does it, the Chamber of Commerce or their economic development director, and just stealing that framework of procedures and sponsorship. Because if you're talking about trying to pay back the sign over years, the town or somebody needs to front the whole money up front, right, to get it done.
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the process. I'm not talking. Jason's spearheading this the way he feels he should spearhead this. I'm terribly confident that he knows how to do it without any of our input.
Yeah.
But at some point he wants to. So can he send us an email saying, guys, I've decided we're going to go with this sign, with this look, and this process, and then we could feedback to him, some feedback, but not deliberate.
It's deliberation. I mean, I love you, Pete, but I'm sending the open meeting law over to your house with cuffs.
Right. So, Mary, what Jason can do is basically send out information that we then talk about in a meeting. But he can talk to 3 other towns, or found out that it's $200 to make a sign here, or whatever. Right? That could happen. As long as
he can gather info and he can push it to all of you, but you guys can't back to him.
We can't talk about it. Gotcha.
But two of us can discuss it, like Paul and I discuss minutes, for example. So Jason, use someone other than me to deliberate with you on where the signs will go, and figure out. 2 of you can chat about this amongst yourselves. So you and someone besides me.
Can I just ask, also, have you checked with the building commissioner about the signage?
We checked with Dave Smith, and he was like, don't worry about it.
No, Richard Hanks is the building commissioner.
No, I know.
Okay.
I'm telling you what we did do.
There's a couple of different. You'd want Dave Smith to make sure it's not going to get plowed down, and the police chief to make sure it's not obstructing any view, and then the building commissioner, who's the zoning enforcement officer, on the idea of signs. Jason, you came up with that. You take that image you have and you sent it to them as well as the town administrator, just to keep her in the loop.
Yeah.
And let the department heads give you feedback. You want that, and then and then your committee can talk more. You can just push out your response, your gathered feedback to them. That's going to really cue you up for your next meeting.
Okay.
Hey, Jason, one thing I could do is I'll go
having more details.
Yeah. Jason, what I'll do is I'll read the bylaws and then talk to Tim a little bit, because we went through a whole bunch of signed bylaws 10 years ago, whatever it was, and we can look at those too and see what the limitations are.
And Margaret, you said Richard?
Richard Hanks is the building commissioner. He's the zoning enforcement officer, so he oversees signs and whether they're a go or not.
All right.
Size, lighting, all that stuff.
That's also set forth in the zoning bylaws.
It is, but I think when it's a town-initiated effort, you want to make sure you get your department head's feedback on it.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with that.
You are correct.
I think the town can put signs where everyone else may not be able to. I think there's some exemption for town signs.
Well, they can't put it on private property without permission. They wouldn't be putting it on state property. There's several places that Dave can triangulate for you. Did you already do that, Jason? Do you already have town-approved locations for signs?
No. The map was just locations that I thought would be the right spots. And I didn't speak to Dave or anybody yet, as far as what's available.
So when you actually finally drop a pin on the map, Molly, the assessor's office, can confirm if it's town-owned land or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul, are you okay perhaps working with Jason on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna work with you. I'll read the zoning stuff and they see where generally we can put a sign, what the general limitations are. Sure, there's an exception or exceptions for us as a town to be able to put it elsewhere. But
What I'm thinking about is the global big picture. If the two of you can work on whatever pieces of the puzzle there are, and then next meeting you guys can bring us closer to a conclusion, whatever that may be.
Which is a great segue because we have to talk about next meeting.
Yes. 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or 8 weeks? What do you all prefer?
8.
All right, we have 1/8. Anybody else?
Works for me.
All right.
Sure.
So sometime in September, right?
I vote next week.
Yeah. You don't have enough to do, apparently.
We could do September 1st. It's a Tuesday.
That's fine with me.
Works for me.
As far as I know, it works for me.
All right. That's right before Labor Day. Does that interfere with anybody's lives?
It's a Tuesday, so it should be good.
Okay.
It's like a week before Labor Day.
Exactly. All right. 6 p.m. Is that what everybody still likes?
Yep, that's fine.
Jeff? Does that work?
That works.
All right. So 6 o'clock. And anything else? Jason, anything else besides the sign that you wanted to share with us? And the website?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking the lead on this and doing that. All that. Anyone else have any other Solomonic words?
Jeff, there's something that Jeff had here on the minutes, the agenda relative to update on CARES and conflict.
You had a conflict. Yeah. You had a conflict issue with planning, was it? You were going to see?
I was approved by planning. Basically, the conflict was just that I work for Clinton Savings Bank, which has accounts with the town. Therefore, since I'm working with both my employer and the town, it needs to be on record, which now it is.
It is, yep.
All right, wonderful. And anything special in the 2 minutes we've got to share with us, CARES Act-wise? Coming legislation, old legislation changes, anything worthwhile or interesting?
2 things worth noting. PPP applications are no longer accepted as of yesterday. So that program is done in terms of applying for it unless something changes. And also they changed the period that you have to use the money from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So whatever was applied for was originally supposed to be used within an 8-week period. They've extended that to a 24-week period. And we've started the process. Everyone has started the process of loan forgiveness.
Okay, super. Paul, thanks for pointing out my omission of Jeff. Appreciate that. All right, so unless anything else, anyone else?
No.
I guess not. Mary, thank you for holding our hands.
No problem.
Thank you thanks for all the participation, and especially thanks to you, Jason, for what you've done.
Yep, and Peter, you're moving to close the meeting.
I'm moving to close the meeting. Is there a second?
Jason should second because that would make my notes easier.
I'll second it. And
All right.
I'll reach out to you.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor?
Sounds good. I'm in favor.
All right.
Here.
Anybody
I'm in
opposed?
favor.
I guess not. The meeting is adjourned and we got a minute to go.